Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here. So today we are gonna talk about Amos Bow for Tighnari. This is actually in fact my third video in the same day. So yeah, I'm trying to rush out the content before we can before 3.0 is out. So first off, this is Amos Bow, and obviously I'll do all the different type of content related to Amos Bow here, which will be the damage and then the artifact comparison in terms of main sense, the artifact set, Wanderers versus Gilded Dreams, and also the Goblet, right? Because there's so much damage bonus already coming from Amos Bow. Does it make sense to continue using Dendro Goblet? And that will be covered as well. And obviously Hunter's Path versus Amos Bow. Now, I don't really have the time to do the rest of the weapons, although I did at least do Stringless, but without the analysis, just the figures. So I'll quickly show that and give you guys an idea of where it stands. It will be probably right before the TLDR. Okay. So first off, with Amos Bow, the crit stats on Tighnari will have to take quite a hit. His crit damage drops to 158 in order to maintain the same CR. In return, you get a higher attack and a CA damage bonus that's actually pretty good for Tighnari. Why? Because after I did a frame by frame analysis, I'm actually confident that if the Amos effect does work on the caster bloom arrows, which it should if we use Ganyu as a reference, it will be the full 0.5 second bonus because it really takes 0.5 seconds or more for the 4 to 5 caster bloom arrows to hit from spawning. Which means the moment you hit with your wave arrow initial hit, the 4 to 5 caster bloom arrows when they spawn rise up and then fall down again through its homing effect, it actually takes 0.5 seconds, and that is if with a small mob that bounced up from the first hit. So it was already moving towards the 4 to 5 arrows, and it was still 0.5 seconds of the duration. So if that's the case, the full Amos weapon effect, the full charge attack damage bonus is gonna work on the cluster bloom arrows. So the question here is then that the question here then is, will this bring Amos Bow to perform better than its signature Hunter's Path? But before you get your hopes up, don't forget that Hunter's Path also adds base damage to its charge attack too. Okay? On top of its imba stats. So let's look at Tighnari with Amos Bow, the damage. Now all the stats are as per Tighnari Math Guide 2 except for the corresponding changes due to switching from Hunter's Path to Amos. Right? I mean, you drop a lot of CR, so correspondingly the crit stats have to drop, attack increases, yeah, stuff like that. Okay, so basically these are the damage figures. You'll see that it's actually not too bad, right? It's about 1 million at C6R5. But if you remember the latest damage figures, the updated ones, you'll notice that it's not as high as Hunter's Path, but I'll do a percentage comparison later, which is here. Okay, now let's talk about the main stat sense for Amos Bow. We are using the attack sense as a comparison here. So you'll see that on the 4GD, EM sense is actually worse. You see this being red means that EM is worse than attack sense. Why? Because there's no EM scaling from Hunter's Path effect. The 160 to 320% EM added as a base damage bonus to Hunt. Your charge attacks is gone. Okay. Another reason is obviously diminishing returns from EM. Because we are using 4 Gilded Dreams, that is already giving us like what? 180 EM if you have a second Dendro character in the comp. So that's the reason why the EM sense has a bit of a diminishing returns. Now remember, this is with all the buffs. So obviously if you don't have buffs, it will be even closer. Because right now it's already very close, the difference. And you can just use the better road main stat artifact between the two. Okay? Now on 4 Wanderers, EM sense is actually better by 0.6 to 2.4%. i.e. it's still very close, but now you see it being better. And in fact, at C6, attack sense is better by 0.4%. But again, remember, this is with Team EM buffs present. Without Team EM buff present, more likely than not, you will get even better results on EM sense from both of them. Though I don't expect it to be too big of a difference. Okay. Now let's talk about 4 Wanderers versus 4 GD next. So you see here, if you're using attack sense, 4GD is always better, right? Attack sense versus attack sense. You see that there are no, it's all read, okay? It's all read. So 4GD is always better. Again, why? Because diminishing returns from EM, right? In this particular case anyway. Now, if using EM sense, the difference between 4WT and 4GD is so small that it's pretty much similar. You can see from this. Okay. Now, I can also extrapolate to go one step further. If you don't have those team EM buffs, then likely EM sense versus 4 Wanderers EM versus the 4GD EM is going to see an even better performance here. Okay. Now, but it's still not going to be like groundbreakingly big because you see the percentage figures, you know. Okay, so eventually it still depends on which side you have better stats on if you're using EM sense. Now, let's move on next. So I know people have the idea that you know, we have a lot of damage bonuses, then should we just use EM or attack Goblet instead of Dendro damage Goblet? Thing is, let me show the figures first. Okay, so you can see, right? It's not as high. It's worse off because we had 1,900,000 plus K here. Now it's 802 and 935K. Right? So I think it's very, very, very clear. Okay. Now, but first off, this is just attack versus. Right now, these are the attack figures and the EM figures. I've not done the actual comparison, but you can see that's lower. But you do see that attack is higher than EM. Yeah? Attack Goblet is higher than EM Goblet. So we will compare attack Goblet versus Dendro Goblet. And this is your percentage figure. So this is Dendro compared against this. So this being not being read means that this is better than attack Goblet. Dendro Goblet is better than attack Goblet by this type of percentage figures, depending on which permutation you have. So clearly, Dendro Goblet is still superior. There's a very common misunderstanding on the diminishing returns of damage bonuses. I can tell you guys that you need a very high amount in order for attack Goblet to be equivalent to damage Goblet. Typically, it's about 130 to 150%. And in this case, because our attack is already pretty high from Amos Bow plus R1 allergy attack buff, you're gonna need a higher total damage bonus for Dendro Goblet to not be the best. That's the reason why. That's the reason why Dendro Goblet is still performing better than attack and is still performing better than EM Goblet, even if you have R5 Amos Bow. Okay? Although obviously it gets closer when you have R5. Yeah? The percentage difference is smaller. And other thing to note is that the damage bonus, majority of it is only on one talent, which is in the charge attack, not on all types of attacks. That's the reason why. Whereas Dendro is on every talent. Okay. So Dendro Goblet is still better for Tighnari, even with Amos Bow. Let's talk about Hunter's Path versus Amos Bow, because I know that is what people will be most interested in. So these are the Hunter's Path figures, and comparing them against the Amos Bow's figures that I showed earlier. These are the percentage figures. Okay, so on EM sense, Hunter's Path is better than Amos Bow by a significant amount. It's about 16 to 24% better for R1 versus R1, and 21 to 35% better for R5 versus R5. So obviously the 21 to 35 depends on which constellation you are at. Likewise for R1. On attack sense, Hunter's Path is still better than Amos Bow by quite a fair bit. It's 11 to 19% better for R1 versus R1, and 13 to 26% better for R5 versus R5. Now, 11% is a little bit low, 19% is fine. So, but remember that this is also a 5-star weapon. So for it to be a whole tier higher at like 19% or 24%, right, it's very good for Hunter's Path. But 11% on the other hand is not that great. But again, remember, it's a 5-star versus 5-star. Having 11% is like half a tier. It's still not bad. It's still pretty good. But I would recommend to look at the specific permutation you are looking for and decide if Hunter's Path or Amos is better for you. But generally speaking, I'll say Hunter's Path is worth pulling, given the difference, unless you intend to go attack Dendro crit damage on 4 Wanderers on the C0 Tighnari. That's the only scenario where it feels not as great to go for Hunter's Path. But bear in mind that even with this, you are still doing less than you would with Hunter's Path. Okay? You still do less than with Amos Bow no matter what. It's just that at least the difference is 11%. And also, if you think Vortex Vanquisher is bad, which is, and I mentioned this because it's on the same banner with Hunter's Path, I think Kokomi's Donut, which is the next weapon with Amos Bow, that's my guess, right? Because it's Ganyu and Kokomi coming next, so it's going to be Kokomi's Donut together with Amos Bow. I think that is a worse banner. I think Vortex Vanquisher is still better than Kokomi's Donut. Kokomi's Donut is absolutely useless as of now. Still useless in my opinion because there's so much better artifacts to use, right? Like TTODS, Prototype Ember. So yeah. Alright, now before I go into the TLDR, let me talk about Stringless. Let me just quickly show the Stringless figures. So these are the Stringless figures. Okay, you see that it's not high, right? At R5 Stringless, we are looking at 752k at C6, 443k at R1. Now you may choose to assess whether 443k to you is high enough at a C0R1 state, C0R5 Stringless state. But it's not great because if you look at Amos or rather Hunter's Path, at the highest permutation, which is 4GD with EM sense, you have we use R1 to compare against the R5 Stringless, that's fairer, right? So 610k or 609k, depending on around or not, it's still almost 150k more than this, which means it's almost 33% better. Thereabout. It's about 33% better. So yeah, Stringless isn't that great because the thing about Stringless is that it doesn't increase charge attack damage. While Tighnari has a higher percentage from his charge attack damage, his other talents, specifically his Q, also does more. It does a considerable amount. Alright, so I hope that helps gives you an idea on Stringless. Let's go into the TLDR for Amos Bow for Tighnari. So Amos looks to be well utilized by Tighnari as his Cluster Bloom arrows takes 0.5 seconds from spawn to hit, i.e. utilizing the full Amos charge attack bonus. This is of course assuming that Amos apply for his Cluster Bloom, which is should if Glavin is taken as a reference. Now, even with this though, Hunter's Path is still better than Amos. On EM sense, Hunter's Path is better than Amos by a significant amount, 16 to 24% for R1 versus R1, and 21 to 35% for R5 versus R5. On attack sense, Hunter's Path is still better than Amos Bow by quite a fair bit, 11 to 19% for R1 versus R1, 13 to 26% for R5 versus R5. Okay. Now remember, it's a 5-star weapon. If this was a comparison of Hunter's Path versus a 4-star weapon and the percentage was 11 to 90%, I'll say that 11 to 19% is bad. But if it's a 5-star versus a 5-star, then it's still okay. It's still deserving of what a signature weapon should perform as. But the fact that it has a potential to go all the way to 21 to 35% or 16 to 24%, that's even better for it, right? Okay. So in terms of attack sense versus EM sense, they're actually very close. It's about 0.6 to 2.5% difference, with EM sense being slightly better on 4WT for Wanderers, except at C6 where it's minus 0.4, i.e. attack sense is slightly better. But again, remember this is with EM team buffs. Without EM team buffs, probably, and I'm talking about stuff like C4 Collier, R1 allergy. Of course, there are other buffs, but more or less this is what I'm talking about. So without those buffs, EM sense will probably do even better because it's a diminishing thing kind of thing. But EM sense doing slightly, but it's not going to be a huge difference. That's what I'm trying to say here, because they were already very close to begin with. So with it, without those, without that 160 EM, it's not that big of a difference, or rather, at least for the sense between the EM sense and the attack sense comparison, it's not that big of a difference. Okay, so attack sense is slightly better on 4GG, 0.6 to 2.5%. But again, given how close the difference is, just use the better rope piece. Seriously, just use the better rope piece. Okay, unless you have 0 team buffs at all. Not even... in this case, there's no animal character. Yeah, okay. So for 4WT versus 4GD, if using attack sense, 4GT is always better. If using EM sense, the difference between 4WT and 4GT is so small that it's pretty much similar. So again, depends on which side you have better stats on. So this is a good thing. At least the options are a bit more flexible, right? Because we are farming 4GD. We will be farming 4GD, but for Wanderers it's not farmable per se. You have to collect it over time. So technically speaking, the chances of getting a better 4GT piece is higher than a 4WT piece. But yeah, we all know how artifact farming is like in Genshin, right? Now, attack versus EM versus damage Goblet on Amos. Dendro Goblet is still better for Tighnari, even with the high CA damage bonus from Amos Bow. Okay, enough said. Now, personally, I will pull for Hunter's Path because it's still better than R5 Amos. Yeah, I know I didn't compare it in this video, but for my own personal reference, I did not compare it, but the figures are there, so you can pause and look at it if you want to. But for me personally, since it's better than R5's Amo and it saves me the trouble of switching weapons for Ganyu, then yeah, I will pull for Hunter's Path. But if you are someone who is already adverse to pulling on weapon banner and you have Amos, it's not a bad option for Tighnari at all. So yeah, if you are someone who doesn't like to pull on weapon banner, then by all means use Amos if you have Amos. Alright. Okay, so actually that kind of brings me to the end of the Tighnari math. Whatever comes next will be simply the post-launch or post-release videos where we actually test out Tighnari in comms and rotations, etc. Okay, I'm really looking forward to testing all those stuff. I do have the Dory Math Guide one that's already completed, but I'll probably start doing it. I'll release it a few weeks later, because we will also have information on Nilo and Sino, and I think people will be more interested in those two characters as well. So yeah, I'll probably start on Nilo and Sino late this week or early next week, or end next week. And I better give myself a bit of buffer, maybe end next week, because there's a whole new continent with a whole new element. We're gonna be busy, man. We're gonna be busy this coming few weeks. This 1 to 2 weeks. Alright, so I hope to see you guys tomorrow when the server goes live and I'll stream on YouTube. I'll just do like the pulls. We'll pull for a C5 Kole, because we're gonna get one copy from the event, so we just pull for C5. We'll start at C5, and we'll do the first playthrough for 3.0. I'll try to level the character to as much of a extent as I can, but I doubt that we can do too much, because in the first place, we still have to farm a lot of stuff for them, and probably need to clear the story as well. Yeah, so I'd love to do all that. Just a quick first playthrough. I'm not going to do like a super long stream, because I have a baby at home. Baby needs time to feed and play, etc. Okay. Alright. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you like the content. If you like the content, remember the video and click subscribe for more. Bye.